Last session of the day, and there is still a huge number of you online. So thank you for sticking with us, and hopefully you're still getting lots of value from the material. So earlier today, I spoke to Karthik Ravindran of Microsoft about his journey and about some of the tools Microsoft is bringing to market to help data heroes like yourselves on their journey. One of them was Microsoft Fabric. That's one that we think is going to be hugely consequential as it gets adopted out there in the world. For any Microsoft-centric organization, it's hard to imagine you wouldn't implement it because it will make, I think, a big difference in how you do enterprise data management. So in this session, we're going to dive a bit deeper. Specifically, Eric Melcher is going to dive a bit deeper. He's the CTO of Prophecy with two folks from Microsoft, Holly Kelly and Eric Zweifel of Microsoft. Prophecy was, as you'll hear in the session when we get into it here, we've been integrated with Fabric since day one, and we continue to drive for deeper integration with Microsoft, with Fabric, as we get towards the GA of Microsoft Fabric. So over to you, Eric and panel.
All right, welcome everybody to this session. In this session, we will be discussing Microsoft Fabric and how it can help you, the data hero out there. My name is Eric Melcher. I'm the CTO here at Prophecy. I'll let my other two panelists introduce themselves, and then Holly will kick us off with a high-level overview of Fabric itself. Eric?
Hi, everyone. Nice to meet you. I'm Eric Zweifel. I'm the Chief Data and Analytics Officer at Microsoft for the Americas region, working with customers in North and South America as they're on their data and AI journey. Holly?
Yeah, so my name is Holly Kelly. I'm a Principal Program Manager for the Fabric Customer Advisory Team. My role is to sit between engineering and our customers to make sure that we're building the right capabilities and the best product to meet enterprise needs. So I think I'm going to go ahead and start out with a quick overview of what Fabric is for those of you that might not have heard of Fabric. So I'm going to go ahead and just share my screen quickly. Okay. So if we're going to just talk a little bit about what Fabric is, I'm going to just start by positioning kind of some of the problems that we're intending to address here. So, when you think about any organization creating a complex data estate for analytics, these are typically the challenges that we're running into or that we hear from our customers. So, first off is just as we're producing more and more data coming from devices, coming from the world around us, coming from different applications, data is kind of being produced in this ubiquitous fashion. And so what we're finding is that, a lot of the kind of legacy types of systems are running into things like scalability issues, the lack of capabilities in ingesting these large amounts of data and, making sense of that data to provide the insights out to the business. And so, what we're finding is that organizations are wanting to then modernize that stack in terms of, leveraging the cloud, for that type of scale performance. And as well as just, having those capabilities that are not, having to be managed on-prem, but really, being able to leverage a lot of the platforms from the cloud perspective. We're also finding that, as we move into these, more complex data estates, the amount of people that can actually participate in that insight creation is limited. And so, you find these highly skilled resources that are very difficult to find and retain. And so, it just kind of creates this bottleneck where when we go through kind of some of these monolithic types of processes in that it's very difficult to get that agile insights at the time that it's needed. What we're also finding is that there's a lot of silos of data. Some of that has to go back to data governance of just not knowing where to find data, but it's also just that, data is being copied in a ubiquitous fashion across the entire data estate. So what this leads to is lack of consistency. It leads to, difference of insights that are being created, and how do you know what to trust? And then the other thing as well is that, with this whole rise of self-service and more, business users being a little bit more data curious or actually, getting deeply ingrained into the data, we have this need to balance more of the, very technical monolithic type of architectures into this whole, self-service type of paradigm where you have a whole new class of users that are participating as part of that insight creation. And then again, I mentioned governance on the silo side, but as we move into more of these self-service types of architectures where you're federating that insight creation, the governance piece of that becomes extremely critical. And when you look at what organizations are dealing with today, this is the reality. This is just a really great view of the entire data and AI landscape that exists out there today. There's vendors that are entering this space all the time. And so, when you're looking at these broad set of vendors, how do you know you're making the right decision and that you're not pulling yourself in where you're having to pay almost this integration tax, where you're having to integrate, multiple different vendors together just in order to operate in a seamless fashion. And so, as we talk to a lot of organizations, one thing became very clear. And I think this is just a really great quote. This actually came from one of our chief data officers, but it really applies to every organization we talk to, is that I want to focus on the data. I want to be the chief data officer. I don't want to have to spend a lot of my time, energy, resources, and budget being the integration officer. And that's, really the reality today, is that we're having to, make a decision to allocate different resources that are highly skilled to be able to build out these infrastructures that cause complexity, fragility, and again, just that whole costly effort of trying to integrate everything together. This is just a really interesting statistic. And this is something that, just as I've been talking to customers, I've seen pretty consistently, is that, again, we're kind of moving away from a lot of these monolithic types of architectures where IT or, these very technical data teams own everything. And we're really moving to more of this federated types of insight creation, where the business user has that domain context. They know how to process the data. They know what the insights they're looking for. But again, with that bottleneck of IT and not being able to use these technical tools, it was really never possible before. And so what we're finding is, as these new tools are coming into place and we're allowing business users to truly participate as part of that insight creation, we're seeing this kind of shift where, domain data teams are kind of owning more of the insight creation, domain-driven context, but still we have these enterprise data teams that are maybe managing those data domains that are common across the enterprise. So it creates this really nice synergistic relationship between enterprise data teams kind of owning and governing and managing those, master data types of entities that are common across the organization, but allowing domain teams the flexibility to maybe inherit those entities, create their own domain context, and then really drive the insights out of those business domains, because again, they're the ones that really know and understand that data. So as we look at modernization, we kind of talked about a lot of those different, pillars that we run into from the issues perspective. And again, the variety of siloed solutions and siloed data, and really moving that into more of these integrated types of platforms. And again, because of that federation, because that business user enablement, we see a lot more type of SaaS types of foundations where, again, the infrastructure is kind of taken care of and you can just really focus on that data creation. The security risks, just in terms of that whole data proliferation of, making sure that, data is not just living out there in Excel, but really into this common foundation that has all of the governance, compliance, and security features built into that. We talked about a little bit of the domains wanting to own more of that data. And so, when we think about these data stewards, kind of owning those data entities, but really, like I said, enabling kind of some of those self-service types of capabilities, and really increasing the agility of that insight creation by allowing the business users to participate within that whole ecosystem. And again, we talked about those integration and kind of maintenance of these long legacy types of systems that leads to cost, fragility, et cetera. So moving into this modern data estate, being very cost transparent and being able to, leverage compute in a more holistic fashion, so that you don't have, a ton of idle time or things like that you're having to manage, but how can we leverage that compute in a more holistic way to reduce that management overhead? So just quickly, if you look at what Fabric is, this is just a really great, kind of overview slide. I think the biggest piece here is that, what Fabric is built on is this unified SaaS foundation. So what I mean by SaaS foundation is literally all of these different components that you're seeing from a workload perspective, they're already pre-provisioned, they're already pre-wired to work together. And we create this lovely unified experience where you can have multiple personas coming in from different skill sets, but they're all contributing to the same solution because of this common foundation. Within the common foundation, we also have things built in like that meet the security and governance needs. Again, we have that common compute surface that I talked about in the prior slide, where you're not having to manage multiple pools of compute, scale them independently that kind of live across your entire data estate. We've got this unified compute service that sits behind Fabric that every single workload within Fabric can charge to that compute. And it also then unifies the business model because, again, everything's kind of being provisioned and accumulated through the same purchasing vehicle. The main platform of Fabric is something called OneLake. OneLake is essentially a SaaS delivered data lake for the entire organization. So when you spin up a Fabric tenant, you're already provisioned a OneLake service. So when we talk about the different silos of data, a lot of the times, people were using different data lake storage accounts to basically store their data. And that became a huge, complex need because discovering that data, getting access to that data across all of these different silos became a really difficult proposition. So what OneLake does is it kind of takes all of the different data proliferation across all of these different silos, and it brings it into a common data lake foundation. So as part of that SaaS delivered data lake, we have built-in capabilities where all of the different services within Fabric are built to read and write data within what we call the managed storage within Fabric. But we also have the ability of mounting external data lakes that you might already have in place today. But by doing that, it brings it into this OneLake foundation that allows you to have full lineage, PII scans, information protection labels. So it gives you that built-in governance at the lake layer, across every single, data silo within your organization. And then, of course, sitting on top of OneLake are all of the different workloads that really enable Fabric. And each one of these is really targeted at a particular persona. And like I said, you might have varying personas coming in and contributing to the same solution, so they can pick the tool that's most relevant to them. And if you look at all of the different pillars, these kind of meet the needs across every single organization to manage data. So being able to ingest data at scale and orchestrate that in to the landing in the data estate, being able to use things like Spark and data engineering to process unstructured data, semi-structured data, large data, and really, creating insights out of that data. We still see a lot of organizations that still have, a lot of those SQL types of skill sets, or maybe just even needs that really only data warehouses can do, things like multi-table transactional updates. So we give you that same, data warehouse type of experience, but bringing that into this common SaaS foundation. Data science is another persona that we can have participating as part of the insight creation. So, data scientists being able to explore, prepare data at scale, and really creating, experiments and runs and ML models that can be operationalized throughout the organization. Real-time analytics, being able to stream data in real time and get that insight out. The other thing as well with real-time analytics is that we'll also stream that into OneLake, where when you want to start merging streaming data and batch data into a common analytic foundation, we have the ability of doing that. And then, of course, on the BI front, this is why we're doing all of this and preparing the data, is to really give the business users the insight that they need at the time that they need it. So Power BI is really critical for that. Power BI has been one of our foundational elements in the data estate today. And we saw a huge uptick in the adoption of Power BI. In fact, Power BI is the standard at most large organizations. So being able to leverage that Power BI footprint, but really back that with all of those, scalable data foundational elements as part of this entire ecosystem. And then finally, the last pillar here is something called Data Activator. What Data Activator allows you to do is basically set up a system of detection that sits on top of your systems of intelligence that will drive systems of action. So what Data Activator allows you to do is to set up different business rules or thresholds directly on top of that data. And when that business rule or threshold is hit, it will actually kick off operational systems so that you have kind of this ambient service that sits behind the scenes. It's allowing you to take action on that data as it's coming in. So that's just a really quick overview of what Fabric is. I'm sure there's a lot more details that I might not have gotten into. There's a lot of YouTube videos, a lot of things out there if you want to learn more about Fabric. But Eric, I'll pass it back to you.
All right, thank you for that, Holly. So with that overview complete, what we'll now do is go into more of a conversation here. So what I'd like to kick it off with is while Fabric was just announced here in May publicly, it's something that we know Microsoft's been working on for a year. So this is a major product, years in the maker. It's really a product of products. And with the amount of investment that's gone into it, I know there's some various paradigm shifts that it's bringing into the market. Would you mind sharing, the paradigm shifts that you guys see Fabric introducing and what kind of effect that's going to have for the data analytics leader?
So I can just start with that, and then Eric, I'll let you kind of chime in. But exactly as I was mentioning in the Fabric overview, I think one of the things that we're mainly seeing is the whole federation of insights, right? And having the experience where business users can participate, in a meaningful way in that insight creation. And so with Fabric, we allow a whole new class of users to participate within that, because we will have pro dev types of tools that really meet the needs for, those deep technical users to be able to have, all of the advanced tooling to be able to do what they need to do. But then as part of this whole, SaaS foundation, we have all of these new low code, no code types of experiences that are more UX or GUI driven, where, a whole different class of users can come in and they can use the same platform, the same experience, the same types of tools, but having a little bit more of an interface that's more relevant to them to be able to do that. And it's all within the same experience. So Eric, I don't know if you've seen anything different in your customers, but that's probably one of the main things that I'm seeing.
Yeah, for me, it's really about it's continuing the progression of separating compute and storage when it comes to your data estate. And so you have this concept of one lake where we can have a single copy of our data that's stored in an open source format. And then we bring the different compute elements to that data set, and we can interact with them at the same time. And so you can have a SQL data warehouse type workload querying data at the same time that a Spark workload is updating that data and engineering that data. And at the same time as you have something like Data Activator monitoring for changes. And so all of these are happening behind the scenes. And in addition to that, on the compute side, like Holly was mentioning, it completely changes that you have this compute capacity. I don't have to worry about sizing the right Spark cluster and sizing the right data warehouse. Instead, they pull from the compute that I have available as my capacity, and they're sized accordingly to individual workloads and use cases. And so I don't have to worry about cluster management or anything. I have a capacity, and then I run a Spark workload against that capacity, for instance.
Yeah, and I'll add to that. So what we've noticed, obviously, with the work we've been doing with the Fabric team is, you go create a Fabric workspace, everything's there. I don't have to go worry about provisioning all these various resources. It's a true SaaS experience. And then also the whole one lake, one copy paradigm, where it used to be you had to load the data into your data lake and then move into different formats from different workloads. Now you can just land it once, and all these different workloads can collaborate. So yeah, I think it's really kind of, I think, going to change pretty dramatically the workflow for data analytics teams as they adopt this new paradigm. So now that it's been under Skunkworks for a long time, now it's finally public. We can all talk about it out in the open. So in your work with customers, what's the reaction been? What kind of adoption are you guys seeing? And what's the feedback that you've gotten so far on Fabric?
Eric, I'll let you start since you're working with customers more on
All
a daily
right.
basis.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the reaction's been great. I think the customers that I've talked to see the promise here on how it can completely change the way that they're working, help get out and support that federated model of individual business teams being able to build the right insights and use the data as they need to and as quickly as they need to. And so for me, the reaction's been great. At the same time, I think it's been, cautiously optimistic. This is a new technology, a new way of solving things. And so people are, when you have the new, you absolutely need to start getting that experience with it and building on top of it, and so on.
Yeah, and I think I'll just add on to that. So I 100% agree with Eric. I think, there's a lot of promise here, lots of excitement, and as folks have been testing this out. So I've been involved with Fabric even before there was a line of, well, not a line of code, but before we had this even in private preview. So I worked with several customers throughout private preview, public preview, et cetera. This is probably one of the biggest undertakings I've ever seen at Microsoft. And so, it's pulling together a bunch of silo teams and truly unifying. I'm so sorry. Let me start that one more time. Sorry. Okay. Let me start that over. I'm so sorry. Okay. Oh, no, I just lost my train. Oh, okay. So, so I have to agree with Eric. And it's the same things that I've been seeing as well. And I've been working with Fabric, since private preview, right? So in the early days of customers testing. And while this is a huge undertaking, one of the things I will say is that the way that Fabric is being run is that we're running on customer feedback. And so this is probably one of the things that I really appreciate the most about our leadership team is that they're actively pivoting and they're creating capabilities and prioritizing capabilities based off of customer feedback. So a lot of the feedback that we got through private preview, you'll see a lot of that showing up. And the cool thing about Fabric is, as this is a huge undertaking, we're taking on this whole agile release methodology, much like you were used to in Power BI. So gone are the days where you need to wait a year, 18 months, 2 years to see improvements in the product. When we go GA, the next version after GA will be the week after, and the week after that, and the week after that, where we'll have, capabilities showing up on a consistent basis. And so, while we might not have everything there as of day one, it's going to continue to evolve and things are going to continue to show up over time. And like I said, just the customer centricity of this team is really impressive, and really listening to customer feedback and pivoting that and creating our roadmaps based off of, what customers are actually asking for.
Yeah, it was. I remember at the keynote when it was announced, Satya Nadella quipped that this is the largest data investment since SQL Server. And if you think about SQL Server when it's announced, I guess it was 2000, probably wasn't a huge deal then, but obviously over time it's become, a dominant player in that market. And it seems like Fabric is positioned to do something similar, especially as it matures. So along those lines, Eric, if you could kind of put on your sort of future hat and think about, what will the world look like in a couple of years? Like what would a data leader today, who's initially kind of just learning about Fabric, what should they be anticipating? How do you think it'll affect kind of their internal workflows and processes and how they leverage data? And what should they be planning for in the future?
So I think it really helps reduce that integration cost like we've talked about. Now, if I can bring everything into one lake and have a single copy of the data, I can load from my systems of record once, and then all of the different federated teams can pull from that system of record or the analytics copy of that system of record as they need to. And so I don't have to do point-to-point integrations for team A and then team B and then team C. And so that's going to be one of the big things. It should simplify that process of loading up an analytics layer. Additionally, it'll help again, support that like federated model for your teams. So I love that prediction by Gartner that you'll have this, 75% of organizations will have a centralized center of excellence and then the federated business teams. And I think that center of excellence, I've been talking and Karthik Ravindran at Microsoft has talked about that center of excellence. Think of themselves as a center of enablement. And really, it's about enabling those individual teams by setting the right policies in place, by getting the right data to the right people. We don't have to have a centralized reporting team that's the only people that know the data and can build out these static reports or dashboards. Really, it's about getting it out into the hands of the business users. And I think you're going to see that continue to get integrated into things even like PowerPoint and Word and Outlook, where you'll be able to pull data from a warehouse right into the application that you're trying to show up to senior leaders and so on.
Got it. Perfect. Yeah, and as you look at Fabric, it's got obviously a lot of breadth to it, right? It has a lot of different workloads that can do a lot of different things. Prophecy's hosting this Data Hero Summit. We're dead focused on master data management. So can you share what the with Fabric, right? We're getting all this data together. Do you see a role for MDM inside of Fabric, and what are the plans around master data management in the context of this analytics data?
Yeah, so I can take that one. Yes, I mean, I think that master data management is a huge piece of this. So, as Eric was just saying, it really, gives us the ability to, write the data once, secure the data once, and govern the data once. So governance becomes such a huge piece of this, because without governance, it creates chaos, right? And you're giving, this hugely powerful tool for folks to start doing things. And so, without the right governance, without the right, master data. So I kind of talked about the virtual data teams where maybe they're managing those master data domains or master data entities that are common throughout the organization. I think it's going to be hugely critical where, if you're going to have that federated insight creation, that you have that common core of governance, and that whole master data becomes a huge piece of that. So we have integration with Purview. We will have continuing, integration of Purview as we mature, right? So these things will kind of start coming together in a more meaningful way. But we do have partners such as yourselves, as Prophecy, that can be that third-party workload that will have that deep integration and kind of almost sitting between Purview and Fabric and kind of creating that whole master data type of workload or capability that helps round out the entire platform. And that's, something that I think we do see within Fabric as well, is that, we'll provide first party workloads, but we do see the opportunity for all of these ISVs or third party vendors to start creating these integrations, deeply within Fabric to really start rounding out all of the capabilities. But I do think that master data, governance, those core pieces have to be there because, this could proliferate even more silos without that governance. So I think it's a really critical piece that's there.
Yeah, and if I can double down on what Holly is saying, like I absolutely agree with everything she said. And I don't know about all of you, but I hear, does AI replace the need for MDM, or is Fabric going to replace the need for MDM, or insert here, or data quality or anything? And to me, it actually increases the need for these things, because as we're federating out to business users, they don't want to think about, is J Smith the same as John Smith, is the same as John M. Smith. They want a master record. They just want to talk about the customer, regardless of how it shows up in the individual systems.
Yeah. And then AI, garbage in is garbage out, right? Yeah. So while AI is not going to replace master data, absolutely agree with that. Even, providing those business insights without the right governed data, if you're passing bad data in, you're going to get bad insights out. So again, just kind of increasing that need for that governance and that the data cleanliness is just a huge piece of that as well.
Yeah, but obviously I'm biased, but violent agreement. And one thing that we're excited about is how Fabric is, Microsoft's really putting a lot of energy into how to make it possible or easy for ISVs to integrate with it and provide extended capabilities. As big as Microsoft is and as many resources, there's this huge ecosystem of capabilities that the customers need. So we're obviously excited about the opportunity to bring MDM into Fabric. So you mentioned AI. Are there any plans you can share around how OpenAI is going to be sort of embedded into Fabric via Copilot or other types of experiences?
Yeah, I think you can see on YouTube, we have a Copilot experience for everything in Fabric that'll help just unlock new levels of productivity and creativity. And so, yeah, I mean, that's one of the things I'm most excited about when it comes to Fabric is just the capabilities that are enabled by AI. But Holly, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead.
Oh, no. I mean, I 100% agree. And I actually I'm smirking because co-pilots are probably one of the #1 things that everybody wants to get information on, just because it is such a transformational type of thing. And you saw all the announcements at Build, and a lot of those were just anchored in AI and how AI is very much going to transform everything. And with these co-pilot driven experiences, as Eric was saying, it unlocks all this productivity and, even success by default, right? But where if you're asking AI to generate code, it understands syntax and you're not going to have typos and things like that. So, it solves that need. But the other thing as well is that we also see some of these co-pilot experiences almost providing this shift left type of thinking where, I might be a data person, that I understand what I want to do with my data, but I'm not deeply ingrained in Python code. I don't know the syntax of Python. I mean, I might know how to create a data frame, but if I wanted to do something more complex than that, I might, have to spend a ton of time, on blogs or wikis or websites trying to figure this out. And so with these co-pilot driven experiences, it kind of provides this way of naturally upskilling some of your talent to participate in more of these advanced types of capabilities, like creating machine learning models or like creating, some of these Python notebooks that, again, that specialized skill that I talked about at the very beginning, where it's kind of difficult to, find and retain. With these co-pilot driven experiences, you're now allowing a whole new class of user that broadens the pool of users that can actually do these sorts of things. So you'll see a lot of these co-pilot experiences. You saw some of that within Power BI. That's probably the furthest along. But again, these co-pilot driven experiences will be prevalent across all of Fabric. And that's being driven literally from Satya down, just because we do see that huge opportunity for AI to really transform how people work with data. So it's a huge investment from Microsoft. It's a huge focus for all of the teams.
Yep.
But yeah, you'll start seeing a lot more of that, as we start, getting Fabric out to GA.
Yes, it's going to be co-pilot everywhere, I'm sure. So, so I think we're coming up on time. So final question here for both of you. So as you look forward to the future, and with what is coming with Fabric today and in the near term, what are you looking forward to the most down the road?
Oh, that's a tough question.
Yeah.
It's funny because, and I'll just give a little anecdote here. I love playing. Like, I'm just a data geek at heart. And I'll just tell you. So, I always am creating, demos or, just creating, sample types of applications, whatever it might be. And before, when I was working with Synapse and Power BI, it would take me weeks and weeks and weeks to just get something up and running because I had to focus on getting the infrastructure there and the subscriptions and the resource groups and all these different services and compute and wiring all these things together. Now I go into Fabric, I go into a workspace, everything is pre-provisioned. So it's allowed me to really just be very creative and thinking about things in a very different way, but not having to worry about the underpinnings. So just even from like my perspective, I think that's the one thing that excites me the most is just, as users are starting to get into this, there's all these new kind of creative ways of kind of thinking about that data that, again, just kind of frees up the time to think about more of that insight creation than having to worry about all the underpinnings of the platform. So I've just loved going in and being able to have that productivity literally right off the bat, where something that might have taken me a week before in Synapse is taking me 2 hours in Fabric.
That's really cool. Eric?
Yeah, I would say similar. I'm most excited to see where we end up as we get this in the hands of teams that are leveraging this new design for interacting with your data to see what they do with it that we didn't anticipate. When you think back to when the iPhone came out and they created their app store, and how people interact with their phone has fundamentally changed as individual teams and companies started to say, wait, what about this? What about this? And so I'm really excited to see the same thing happen on the analytics layer here. I think we're going to see changes to how how it works as people start leveraging it.
Yeah.
Great. No, perfect. I think that's a great place to end. So hope everybody found this session useful. If you have any questions, feel free to drop us a line. Otherwise, enjoy the rest of the summit. Thanks, everybody.